dingin, ding, 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 dingin, ding, 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 too fast, too furious, yeah! Everyone, hello, I'm CM Kosemen and I'm back today with a new film review of a really fun and great and easy watching movie that actually has some really deep and important themes behind it. I'm talking about none other than The Fate of the Furious. Okay, so these films, in my social life, I hang around in some intellectual or pretend intellectual circles, and it's almost like a ritual to kind of hate on movies like this. Not just Fast and Furious, but also things like Transformers, whatever. Oh, that dumb action movie. Oh, it's so brute. Oh, how could you watch that? It's so shallow. Well, I'm watching these films with relish. I would take any installment of the Fast and Furious series over one of these, kind of like stinking watching this kind of, oops, the phone again. Hello, you are on CM Kosemen podcasts again, and it's my wife. Only my mother and my wife call me anyways these days, so.
Oh, because we love you so much.
I love you too. I'm talking about Fast and Furious. Do you have anything to say to our 90 million viewers? She liked Fast and Furious too.
I can ask you a question. What was your favorite scene in the movie?
My favorite who?
Your favorite scene in the movie.
My favorite team. Scene. Oh yeah. My favorite scene in the last movie, The Fate of the Furious, was this really badass scene where you all thought Jason Statham was dead, and it was sad. Then he comes with his brother in flying wings, and he enters the bad bitch's plane, and then he saves the baby, and he's like punching all these bad guys, and then it's this orgasmic moments in film watching where it's a righteous act, and then in your mind any sort of violence is absolutely good to go. So because he's saving the baby, you watch Jason Statham, like, I don't know, smash a guy's head over some sort of wall or something, and you watch this with such satisfaction. It's like a lump of butter is melting inside your chest, and it's one of those really neat moments because you know that violence is being duked out to the bad guys. Anyways.
Okay, cool. Well, I can also say that Memo was so sad that he was, we thought he was killed. But he waited, and when Jason Statham appeared, he was like, yeah!
Yeah, I was so sad when they told Jason Statham was dead, but he wasn't. But we're gonna get there. Okay, honey, I'm hanging up.
Okay, baby. Alright, I love you. Bye-bye.
Me too. Bye. Okay, it's moments like this that really add a meaning to your life. But anyways, we were talking about Fast and Furious, and actually my wife's comments kind of led me into the discussion. But I was saying, yeah, I would take any installment of the Fast and Furious saga, the Fast and Furious epic, over this kind of some sort of stinking European meta cinema where the characters are always staring, or some sort of tragedy is kind of stuck in our eyes because it's kind of sad and you have to watch it because apparently things like this happen all the time. No, a pivotal, an important and maybe essential part of film is entertainment and good moments, and this movie relishes it. It really has no pretensions of veracity. So you see all these over the top scenes, but the movie knows it's over the top, and it kind of invites you to kind of enjoy these tongue in cheek scenes, and it's really, really good. And of course, this review, if you haven't noticed, is gonna be full of spoilers. So one of my favorite scenes was that bit with Jason Statham, and actually Jason Statham and The Rock were my two favorite characters in this film. And also Dominic Toretto's girlfriend, Michelle Rodriguez, was really good in it. There's another favorite scene in it where there's a prison riot and someone shoots The Rock with a plastic bullet and says, "Oh, they don't work on me," or something like that. So you see how badass. Also in the prison riot, like some bad guy comes at him. It's like, "I've been waiting for this moment for years." And then he just twists the knife and stabs the guy back with it. And he says, "Keep on waiting, brother." And it's just fun. And I mean, behind all this fun, of course, none of these movies would film so good if they didn't connect to some grand themes and some very important points in everybody's life in this day and age. And yeah, you could have like really mindless action films. And I'm not saying the Fast and Furious saga is a kind of like full of epic philosophies and something, but if you look at the main themes and certain motifs in the film, they're actually very relevant to our time, day, and age. And it's no coincidence that these films are so popular all over the world. The first theme in Fast and Furious is, of course, family. The family is a kind of sacred thing, and you never turn your back on family. And of course, in this film, the main character, Dominic Toretto, does, because the bad guys hit him with something much worse. So they got a handle on him, so he has to turn his back over his own family. And this is the kind of main theme of the film. But there's one scene where they're kind of going around in all their cars, because that's, I guess, what they do. And his family kind of catch up with Vin Diesel, Dominic Toretto, and especially his girlfriend. They kind of shoot his car with these grappling hooks, and they're kind of holding him back. And it's like, "Hey, where do you think you're going? You're part of this family, and we have to hold you accountable." And yeah, that's a really cheesy action scene, but there's few other heartfelt expressions of cinematic love than Michelle Rodriguez hooking her rogue husband's car with a grappling hook and trying to drag him down. And hey, it's like, "Where you're going, you have to answer, and what's going on?" I think that was a really emotional scene in a way, in a place where you would least expect to see it. Other bits, okay, the family in Fast and Furious series is not a biological family. I mean, if anything, it's a family that's immensely multi-ethnic, and it grows with every series. And usually enemies join this family as members, and it's like all good. Now it's just a misunderstanding. Guess what was, that was just a entire movie of explosions and car chases, and yeah, you killed some of our friends, but all is forgiven. And okay, you could see this as a kind of cheap gimmick to add on new cast members to the films, but it's actually a really important theme in everybody's life. Forgiveness. Even as cheesy as these forgiving scenes are, or like as unlikely as they seem, forgiveness is still a great value to teach with such films. And the movies do this in such an elegant, non nanny-like manner. And in the movie, like, there's a Cuban guy he's in a street race with Dom, and like he says, he first tries to actually kill him in a street race, but then Dominic forgives him and then gives him his own car actually, and it's actually a bad deal, but and it says, what were you expecting? You know, this guy tried to kill you, and he says, no, but I changed him. And yeah, maybe this is too optimistic, but I think in everyday life, everyday conflict resolution, friends and enemies are not that clear cut. And in fact, people have neither mortal enemies nor friends for life. Both of those are extremely rare. And in showing characters in such interactions with forgiveness and more humane reaction, I think this movie does something really good, and the characters develop really well. And I mean, a lot of kids watch these movies, so it's a really nice moral takeaway. And the morality is not done in an over-the-top and, as I once told, nanny-like manner, which is something few other films can pull off. The family, as I told, is not a biological family, but it's a multi-ethnic family of car thieves and killers and rogue cops from all over the world. But once again, there's a really, really humane, really touching theme in all of this, that whatever happens, if your family is with you, things are gonna be alright. And it's, believe me, this was not scripted, but this theme really warms my heart, and it's even though it's a cheesy action flick, it's really nice to see moments like this in any sort of film. And it's actually it would almost seem staged, where I'm talking about family and like my wife was just on the phone and she was just being cute and nice. But another way to remind that really it's important in life. It could be your wife, girlfriend, parents, friends, but it's really important in life to find people whom you could really rely on and who are willing to go through everything with you. And I think this is very rare and really precious. And I mean, seeing from the way many relationships or even marriages are constructed these days, it's really important that in a film there's this team of people who are willing to stick by each other no matter what happens. And yeah, maybe I'm being like too fuzzy with this, but once again, films like this and themes like this are rare, and if present, they are not in movies that are as enjoyable as the Fast and Furious saga. But moving on, there's also a enduring theme of religion in the films, but this is not any particular religion in like, it's not Catholicism or whatever, but it's a kind of like a rarefied form of belief in something, and that gets expressed a lot in the Fast and Furious series. And I guess in a weird way that's very similar to the religious sentiment that many everyday people feel across the world, and especially in developing countries, in which, I mean, yeah, you have the Catholicism, Islam, whatever. I mean, you have names of the religions, but modern life has rarefied these religions to such an extent that all they amount to is a kind of belief in a sort of certainty. And yeah, the rituals are just cosmetics at this point, but I think this sense of belief is what keeps many people going through life, through all the injustice and unfair work and all the random bullshit that crops up every day and every year. To, you know, the universe has a way of sucker punching everybody. And personally, let's leave my religion out of it, but I don't believe in any form of these rituals, but this kind of belief in family or a certain future is actually something very beneficial. Modern day atheists are sometimes very jaded about this. I mean, I also personally think that science, evolution, they have made many creation myths obsolete, but it's still good to foster this kind of, it's good for your sanity if everything else. And sometimes you can partition a part of your mind to sustain this, even though the core of your personality knows it's uncertain. It's a good fuzzy feeling. And once again, the Fast and Furious series does a good justice to this. And the film has a kind of science and technology versus fate and family kind of theme, which I'm gonna dwell in depth after going through this other point, which is ethnicity. Okay, so too much perhaps is being made of whitewashing and white characters in films recently. Sometimes I think it's a non-issue, like I think the last Ghost in the Shell movie, it was a non-issue. In some other films, it's just really stupid, such as Gods of Egypt or that Great Wall of China adaptation. I mean, I still don't think it's any form of racism, but it's just bad production values when your film is set in China and you have a Caucasian actor. Was he trying to play an Asian guy? I don't know, but or like in Gods of Egypt, you have like Aussie blokes trying to portray Egyptian guys. Look, I don't think this is any form of racism, but it just makes the movie so much more boring. And but this is where the Fast and Furious saga not only shines, but it also outshines. It has the most multi-ethnic cast of any film. Most characters are Hispanic, or in the last film there was even a Middle Eastern good guy, or there was an Asian guy, and there are white guys too. But the great thing about these films is not only this diversity. I actually don't believe in diversity quotas or whatever, but how natural and how much of a non-issue this whole melange of people from all over the world is. Yeah, there are people from all over the world and many different ethnicities, in such a level that the movie sometimes makes fun of this kind of, like in the last film there was this kind of British dude who was like, oh, sorry, you cannot be in this area if you're not willing to purchase any vehicles. And then the two black guys were like, oh yeah, we're gonna purchase vehicles. And they show him their unlimited cash, and they make the guy strip, and kind of like they shame him or shade him, whatever. It's a kind of getting, but ultimately even that guy is forgiven, and it's kind of like they're good with him, whatever. And this kind of conflict resolution, I think, is very rare in the history of films, and it's something profoundly human and important to have in films. And once again, race isn't an issue in these films. It's a non-issue, if anything. And the main divide is between the haves and the have-nots. Now, I know all the characters in the film drive around in multi-million cars, and like owning stupid cars isn't the best indicator of a person's worth, but hey, this film is about cars and vehicles, so you gotta let that slip. But if you look beyond that, all of the characters are kind of like more street smart, like from the hood, or like, yeah, they have done some bad things in their lives, but you know their heart is good. And all the bad guys are like extremely sharply opinionated. They're either within the state system. In the early films, they are like members of the law or whatever, or they are like criminals, but they are so high strung, and those they're so highly disciplined that basically they come across as the man. So this film's modes of allegiance is that if you're from the street, from the hood, and your heart is in the right place, you're one of the family. And the enemies, now here we are going to a really interesting part, and I think this is one section in which the Fast and Furious saga could even be considered prophetic, especially in this latest installment. So in this film, the bad character is Charlize Theron. She has like braids, and she looks actually surprisingly hot, given her age and whatever. But she's like the ultimate hacker, and like she like is so dangerous, and she flies around in this jumbo jet that is somehow never noticed by any government force, and for some reason never feels the need to refuel, I guess. Where does this plane land? But she's so cold, ruthless, and calculating, and in a way she's mechanical and Darwinian. She's like the embodiment of the anonymous global machine. And there's a scene where she hacks all these like new generation semi-self-driving computerized cars in New York, and they turn into this kind of gigantic swarm of zombie cars that bear upon our heroes like some sort of metallic tsunami. And our heroes have their trusted old pig iron dump cars. Like in one scene, you even see Dom Toretto use a Coke can tab to link up a certain wire. Like all their cars are like non-drive-by-wire. They're like what you see is what you get, old pig iron technology. And the bad guy is controlling all these kind of tsunami of computerized cars. And this is actually somewhat relevant because issues have been raised recently where WikiLeaks disclosed these CIA technical hacking methods, and apparently they can make certain models of cars stop if necessary. And in the past few years there was like some suspicious deaths, and I don't know, I don't want to connect any dots here, but conspiracy theorists have called some of these deaths digitally activated car crashes, basically. Now, I don't know if that's true. That might be a false alarm. But the technology is certainly being built. Everything that used to be dumb is now being smarter. And I personally think it's a good thing if you're living in a crowded city and you have to navigate this complex environment of traffic and parking spaces and whatever. Now, in those cases, a kind of even interchangeable digital networked city car is a good thing. But in other cases, it's really stupid, and it's actually really scary. Like there was a case of this one woman who punched in the wrong destination in her sat nav, and she drove straight from the UK to, I believe, Czechoslovakia. And not in one point of the entire journey did she think, maybe I'm doing something wrong. The human element, the human agency risks being taken out of certain very vital systems like communications, like transport. Now, I'm not saying all these smart systems are evil. Well, people buy these things willingly, so, it's not like you weren't warned. But the option should always remain open for a certain group of car owners, consumers, whatever, to be able to purchase dumb systems, non-networked systems. I think this is of extreme importance. Could even be a post-industrial human right. You should technically be able to buy the stupidest car or telephone possible. Not because you're scared of big government, but because a person should have the right to just drive wherever he or she goes without the interruption of these smart systems. In fact, like with my wife, one of our arguments was over, like when we're driving in a kind of new, like I like taking driving vacations to new and strange places, and I like exploring whatever. And if I'm lost, I don't fucking use a sat nav. I don't even use a smartphone. I think they're addictive. My sat nav is people. Just go ask the random guy on the street. You're on a freaking holiday. If you get lost, it's even the better. And I remember there were these cases where we got lost and we accidentally bumped into this amazing archaeology museum or amazing forest or beach or sometimes. And the randomness is what makes our life important, especially in these moments where you're making memories with your loved ones. You know, the networked systems, the painful things about them is not the government controller agency. I don't care if the government is listening, whatever. I have nothing to hide personally. But all these networked systems, the Ubers, the self-driving cars, the sat-navs, they induce a dangerous form of tunnel vision in people. Like that woman who didn't know she was driving to Czechoslovakia. And they take out all the randomness out of life. Like there were cases even in big cities like New York where people want to go to a restaurant or coffee house and they use a fucking sat nav to walk the goddamn street. Okay, if you're like late for a job interview or your work, yes, use that system. But you're walking with a date or you're going out to meet someone, open your own goddamn eyes. You're missing out so much. And if everyone lives this way, it's going to be a very boring and a very stupid future. And a very non-human future, as far as I'm concerned. And I think this is where the prophetic part of Fast and Furious comes in. And this flies over or under the radar of many of these like fake intellectuals who are like, this kind of French cinema, Derrida's like, character, the gays, what happened? And this movie smacks you in the face entertainingly with one of the major conflicts that humanity will face in the future. Many of our political, social, commercial, even religious debates in the future are going to be about the role of the individual versus technological agency in the future. How much should we have of which? And these are going to be some very stringent debates. And I don't claim to have an answer, but this movie addresses them. The bad character flies around in an undetectable plane. She's completely without human feeling. In fact, she kills Dom Toretto's ex-girlfriend because he failed her, whatever. So she's ruthless and she threatens to kill his son. So this woman, who is like the personification of soulless technology, threatens to rip apart the family. And the good guys have only their hearts, have only their dumb cars, and the bad character controls the swarm of anonymous cars and vehicles and untraceable technology. And she says at one point to Dom Toretto, before we see that she's keeping his old ex-girlfriend and son hostage on the plane. Don't ask me why, this is Fast and Furious. But before we really learn how bad she is, she comes to the good character with a kind of enticing promise, like, you like racing, it's all about you, why don't you pursue your individual pleasure to the fullest, and you can ride with me and we can just follow our deepest, basest personal desires, and then with that you will tear your family apart and you will be satisfied. Now, this is partly a gimmicky film villain, but her siren song is very real. Technology, maybe threatening is too loaded a word, but technology individualizes people so deeply that in the end it has some negative consequences. I would dare say that in the last maybe 15 years, the developed world has made the mistake of assuming that technology and some form of state institutions could replace the family. Well, whoopie-doo-dah, it fucking didn't. It actually created, I believe, a lot, not maybe a lot, at least the equivalent number of problems compared to those it's solved. Now, yeah, classical family-based societies have their limitations too. I mean, I think Yuval, this guy who wrote this late Homo Deus, whatever, he was saying you could either have strong family values or strong company and state values, and you almost have to choose between one or the other. Now, yeah, the traditional family structures had their problems, like harshly imposed gender roles, sexual repression of women, religious fanaticism kind of piggybacked on this family structure, I think. So it was like a paradise either, but with that, people also lost a lot of good things, a lot of important things that technologies and states haven't gotten around to fully solving yet. And I don't think, at least in terms of the base core family, the kind of attachment and belonging, not even biological families, but the feeling of belonging and trust you could have on other people, the state and the technology, the uncontrollable technological forces changing our society, they will never fully get to replace those. And that's a big dilemma. The people will have to solve it one way or another. And as I told, these discussions are gonna sometimes violently impact our societies in the developed world and the developing world in the foreseeable future. Family, agency, technology, state, the boundaries will be defined and redefined. That's going to be interesting to watch. And this is where the sublime genius of this latest installment of the Fast and Furious series really comes into play. Instead of the old family society structure, which is not just a blood family, Fast and Furious suggests a family based. Çok yaşa abi. Bless you. I'm sharing this room with a office friend and he's listening to these discussions too. But yeah, so the old blood-based kind of like cruel and ruthless agrarian family isn't really working out. And okay, this is certain. Now, but the new anonymous, technologically mediated, ultimately rarefied, atomized structure of society is kind of really a fuck up as well. So in its place, Fast and Furious, if you peel back all the cars and action and the silly things, really offers a valuable alternative. The new family, the Dominic Toretto family, which is built up by your biological descendants and your girlfriends and maybe wife and husband too. In fact, Dom Toretto makes the point of not having a kid, so he's like not really committed. But still, the family is made up of your biological relations, but not all of them. Because Dom Toretto has a cousin in Cuba, and he's watching out for him, but he's not member of the core family. But also with people who ride with you, people who were once your enemies, but now through forgiving, you have forged strong bonds and you have become able to trust each other. People from different races, countries, ex-girlfriends, ex-boyfriends, the core of a new family, the kind of Dom Toretto family, stands triumphantly in the middle of New York at the ending of this film, and it's like a shaft of sunlight beams down on them, and it's like the birth of a new kind of social organization from the morass and the anonymous cruelty of technology and complex government. And I think that is why, to borrow from another YouTuber, is why this movie is really that good. So Fast and Furious. And also I really like the way the stakes are always increasing. Like these series started out as car heist films, and then somewhere in the halfway of the 2000s they mutated into this action adventure James Bond kind of films, and now they are becoming almost like an extended universe. And I wouldn't be surprised in the future to see a film where the Fast and Furious crew gets to meet the Marvel universe or something silly like that. But God knows, it would be the most enjoyable film to watch. Marvel universe versus Fast and Furious compilation. Please, producers, if you're listening, take heed. Maybe it could be a little compilation, like Fast and Furious versus, not versus, with Deadpool as an indestructible driver. Anyways, dear viewers, what do you think about Fast and Furious? What do you think about society, technology, and where technology will take the family? And what would be your favorite Fast and the Furious universe crossover? Fast and the Furious meets James Bond, Fast and the Furious goes to Snaiad, Fast and the Furious with Marvel. Please comment, like our video, share, and as always, don't forget, family is where the shit's at. No matter which part of the world you're living in or what type of car you're driving. Ow, 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 ow. Ciao. And as always, respect your family, no matter if it's your biological family or your family and extended universe of friends. Because people are precious. Bye.